in the first panel that will be dedicated to data and optimization of operation. So to discuss about that subject, I'm pleased to welcome Michele Miedico, Fatima da Gloria de Sousa, Jean-Philippe Bojard, Pierre Junio, and Pauline Thomson. So welcome and thanks for your participation. I will start this panel with you, Fatima da Gloria de Sousa. You are VP Sustainability at France-KLM. So as an international airline company, what are your key levers to reduce energy consumption and emission? And we talk a lot about eco-piloting. So what have you put in place and what are the savings related to that?
So good morning and thank you all for being here. I really like the introduction. It makes my life easier because you already mentioned the most important key levers. So indeed we have fleet renewal. Every aircraft that arrives has up to 20 to 25% less CO2 emissions. Sustainable aviation fuel, in fact, we are a little bit more demanding because we want a minimum of 75% reductions. And we are already seeing possibilities for around 80% of reductions for the SAF that we use. And indeed, the third element is operational efficiency. And in fact, we have been working on this already since 2012. We have very engaged staff. Our own pilots are making this almost like a bit of pride to have the minimum CO2 emissions on their flights. Recently, we also started working with partners. Pierre, no doubt, will talk about that also. What we see is that with Transavia, we have been able to achieve 3 to 5% of efficiency thanks to these type of measures. So looking at how do you optimize the flight, the departure, the speed at which you are flying, all of these options that we have. And to give you a little bit of an idea, what does that mean? So for Transavia, that means 80 tons of CO2 that we are not emitting, and that is one aircraft in the fleet that it's basically not emitting CO2. On the network carriers, we see about 2 to 3% of efficiencies, and this is, of course, because of the longer range of aircraft. In addition to optimization of the flights, we also do a lot around weights. And you may all remember the time that pilots would be using these heavy bags. No more, they have an iPad now. We have new galleys, new seats. Air France has changed its tableware from porcelain to melamine. We have data tools, artificial intelligence, looking at how much drinking water we should load. Everything to manage the weight on each and every flight, because again, weight will reduce the amount of fuel that we use. So we really have a fuel plan that is shared across the company and where we target on a yearly basis how much fuel do we need to use and how do we bring it down. So that, in a nutshell, gives you a little bit the overview of what we are doing.
Thanks, Fatima. You mentioned your partners, and so we have two companies here providing solutions for airlines or airports. So Pierre Junio, you are founder and CEO of Safety Line, and Jean-Philippe Bojard, you are CEO of Flight Watching. So I would ask you a bit the same question: which type of solution you provide to airline and or airport on flight or on ground operation, and how to scale up, how to go further in this solution? Maybe starting with you, Pierre.
Yes, good morning all. It's good to have such assistance, a big assistance, and looking at what we can do to improve our carbon reduction in aviation. So we at Safety Line, so we have joined CETA just 1 year ago, and our goal is really to use the data that are available, because aviation is one of the biggest producing a massive quantity of data. For example, an aircraft will actually record 1,000 parameters per second. And what is really important is to be able to do something with those data to make them actionable. That's why we mix different skills in our company. to actually apply machine learning, but with a really operational goal to provide all the operators, so starting with the pilots for the eco-flying, actually optimizing the flights during the different phases. So starting with the climb, that is a very big part of the fuel consumption for an aircraft. And this is how because data are available, data are actually, there is a large quantity, but the real thing is to be able to turn those data into actions and use new technologies, because aircraft have been designed quite a while ago now. And like Fatima said, using new technologies like tablet, iPads on the aircraft is actually providing a great opportunity to bring actually very accurate information into the cockpit and make it work for the pilot. Another area where we are working at is on airport. We have partners with Aéroport de Paris since 2013 to be able to see something similar to what has been shown with air carbon, is looking at how we can use the data from the actually operational data from radar from the ground and in the air, in order to be able to identify and also optimize the way the aircraft are moving on the ground during taxiing, but also sequencing the aircraft. So, and here there is a big challenge, is to be able to unlock all the different silos that are actually currently existing, being able to share the information between the different partners on the airport, and to be able to really improve the operations and using the data in real time. And this is something that also can help reduce significantly, because we see that on the ground there is kind of inefficiency between 10 and 20% of, let's say, taxi time, taxi distance, and so on. So this is really important to have make the best use of those data in a day-to-day operation.
Thank you, Pierre. Jean-Philippe, you're also providing solution. Is it on the same phase, or is it complementary to what Pierre mentioned?
Yeah, it's quite complementary. Actually, we're doing ground power optimization, okay, what we call GPO. And that's using aircraft data. You know, aircraft data is available recorded when it's recorded, like on a black box. So, but you can't read that data until the aircraft lands after, okay? It also sends real-time data, but that, again, is not available because the first data set you get is after the takeoff, okay? So there's a sort of blackout period on the ground until the engine is on. And that's where we come in, because we're actually experts of the protocol that is used between the ground and the aircraft. And we use that protocol to interrogate the aircraft and get key parameters from the aircraft while it's on the ground so that we understand how the aircraft is behaving. And one of the key features we're doing for Net-Zero Aviation is the fact of monitoring the EPU. Flight watching is in Revima Group now since 2019. And Revima Group is one of the most important MRO shops, independent MRO shops in the world. So we're experts of APU, and we can optimize the key data that we capture around the aircraft to optimize the usage of the APU and create actions. And that's a short-term win today. So, because there's no modification of the aircraft needed, there's nothing needed. The protocol is there, all you need is software. So we've developed this actually and put it on the market this year, and the results were quite astonishing. Our customers asked us, they wanted to know how much time the APU was actually running. And in fact, they put a threshold of about what they suspect to be an alert, okay? And they found out that, in fact, the APU was running 2 times that, an average 2 times that amount. That means that there's about 50% of overrun potential. Out of that 50% overrun, we can work remotely on that subject with alerts. Today, we were quite efficient, and the short-term win on that part of the overrun is around 30%, okay? And we intend to go further. So that means globally for the APU, around 15% saving on the thing. So that's a lot of carbon too, because a turnaround is about 1 ton on an A320. So, I mean, that's a quick win that we should use. And maybe the next step would be scale on airports.
That's good transition for Michele. We know that the airports are impacted by the aircraft movement, which is most of their Scope 3 emission. So you are head of the environment at JSAC and in charge of the Salerno project, the new airport that will be open in 2024. There is an interesting plan on changing the way you monitor takeoff and landing with new type of data. From satellite rather than ground. Can you elaborate on that and explain how have you done that? I think maybe it was a bit complex to put in place. And what do you expect from that in terms of savings?
Yes, good morning to everyone. Actually, Salerno is a small airport 70 kilometers in south of Naples, and we are performing some major works there in order to improve the existing infrastructure. Because in the next future, Salerno Airport will be as like a second runway of Naples Airport, and we will operate there almost 6 million of passengers. So the works includes the runway extension, the construction of new apron stands, and as well the building of 2 new terminals, one for the general aviation, another one for commercial traffic. So due to the fact that we are building this airport from the basement, practically from zero, we are now adopting all the up-to-date technical solution in order to be more sustainable. For example, the airport will be provided with a remote control tower as one of the first in Italy. And for these reasons, we are updating all the flight procedures in Salerno. And rather than going to install new antennas on the ground, we are using data coming from global navigation satellite systems. So this means that we can optimize the tracks, the arrivals and departure path in order to shorten the flight time. And at the same time, we can as well have a better integration with the Naples ATC that is very close. At the same time, designing the new terminals, we are applying now the newest digital solution that are on the market. For example, we're using biometric systems to monitor and to smooth the passenger flow, and at the same time to control the energy and the consumption of the buildings. So we can have a smart building and have less emission, and at the same time we can provide as well a more pleasant journey for the passengers.
And more generally, do you have other initiatives to reduce emission from airlines, notably in Naples, with the use of air carbon or other type of initiatives?
Yes, of course, in Naples we are going to be accredited hopefully this year at 4+. And then we are working a lot even for the Scope 3 emissions reduction. So we did a lot of implementation. First is, of course, the full application of the ACDM. ACDM means Airport Collaborative Decision Making. That is the sharing of data from the different stakeholders that comes from the black box, as we see, from the radars, in order to have a better planning of the operations and to avoid queues on the departure process and to reduce taxi time. Second important thing is to provide all the aircraft stands with the equipment to give energy and air conditioning to the aircraft. In this way, the pilot may completely switch off the auxiliary power unit, and this way can save fuel and, of course, do less emissions and noise. Then we are now building a new photovoltaic plant in order to give green power to the electric vehicles on the ground. So we are just leading the change of all the fleet operating on the ground from normal cars to electric ones. So this means that we will self-product green energy and give to the handlers this energy in order to save CO2 emission. Maybe one of the most important initiatives that we made is the update of a new initial climb procedure using the global navigation satellite system. So at the moment, there was only one procedure that goes just in the middle of Gulf of Naples, and then the aircraft going to north has to do a very big change and turn and go up. So we provided with new technology new initial climb procedures that go straight to the north. This means that we can save almost 3 to 5 minutes of flight time, and this is translated in a yearly saving of almost 11,000 tons of CO2 emissions and almost 500 hours of flight time, simply letting all the aircraft turning right and going up to the north.
Okay. Thanks a lot. All of you talk about tools and the necessity to have collaborative tools. Pauline, you are director at Ardian and head of digital innovation. We saw the video on air carbon, so there have been a big journey since its creation. What does it provide today? And in your view, what is missing in terms of data? Do we need to break some silos to really have the tool at scale?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. As was mentioned in the video, we started Air Carbon in 2018, first as a student project. We wanted to have more granularity and a better view on the Scope 3 emissions of our airports. Because for us it was a bit of a black box, and it represents more than 95% of carbon emissions for airports. So we first built the model on publicly available data for a well-known international airport. And just to see if the model was running and if we could follow the ACA program's guideline, which is the industry reference for calculating carbon emissions. And then with these results, we went to see the teams at Milan, Turin, and Naples airports. Obviously, the model was lacking precisions at the time, but it had the merit of being there. And progressively, with the airports team, we built more precision into the tool. We were able to calculate more and more parts of the Scope 3 emissions. So Scope 3 emissions include landing and takeoff of aircraft, taxi time, ground handling, but also passengers commuting to and from the airports. And we are still, as mentioned in the video, really co-developing the tool with all the airports teams. Today, we have a good vision, and it's quasi real-time on landing and takeoff and on ground handling, because the model connects directly to the airport's traffic database. But we would like to have more precision in order to build trajectories for what the different stakeholders of the airports can build in terms of initiatives. As we mentioned, APU usage, optimization of aircraft trajectories, all the things that could help the airport simulate the impact on the short term and long term. That's part of the project functionality that we are building. But for that, we really need to break the silos in terms of data, and our ambition is for Air Carbon to become really a sort of central data platform for the airports, where they can collaborate with all the stakeholders and everyone can share their data. So airlines, service providers, aircraft providers, everyone to share their data and act collectively.
Thanks. So we've seen there's technology, data sharing, many levers to accelerate. What about regulation? The last question will be for you, Fatima. What is your view on the Single European Sky? What are the challenges to put it in place? But what could be the impact on this ramp up? And maybe if someone in the panel has another opinion, it will be interesting to debate, but interesting to have your view on that.
Yeah, thank you for this last question. Michele already mentioned that there is a way to organize the airspace. I was actually also quite surprised when I found out for the first time that aircraft are not just flying the most efficient direct route, they are corridors. So they're basically going through a labyrinth of corridors in the air that are invisible. In Europe, basically what does Single European Sky mean? It means borderless travel. It means that where today there is this national organization of airspace, and think civil airspace, military airspace, all of this, every country is doing this by themselves. And the ambition of the Single European Sky is that all the countries together in the European Union agree on a new organization of this airspace. And they call this functional airspace blocks, which of course requires civil and military cooperation. Because they need to agree on how we organize the airspace. But secondly, you also need to talk about governance. Who is going to be in charge of that airspace? How do we arrange that air traffic management? How do we arrange liability if there is an incident or an accident? It's ultimately also a question of sovereignty. So these are difficult political conversations. They have been going on for, I don't know, 30 years, if not more. So it's really not easy to solve, but we are happy to see that this topic has come higher on the agenda because there is a potential of up to 10% of CO2 efficiency. We're not talking small numbers here. So 10% of efficiency. So as Air France-KLM, we are one of the major contributors in the CESAR projects. That means that we are continuously doing trials from gate to gate to see what happens if you do organize this in a different way. And earlier this year, we also participated in the Connecting for Europe days in Lyon, and we had all of our airlines doing their ideal flights with sustainable aviation fuel, but also working together with air traffic management everywhere to go indeed for the most efficient direct flights and then calculating what would be the possible gains from that. And on top of that, we are doing that also with our SkyTeam partners, where we organize now on a yearly basis the SkyTeam Flight Challenge. And we invite not only the regulators in Europe, but all over the world to see how can we contribute to organize air traffic management in a really new way, given that we really anticipate there is still a lot to gain from that.
So we saw in this panel that things are happening already today, is what we said, and it's a lever that is actionable today. We already use data, share data for real impact already. We also see that to go further, maybe we need more favorable regulation, more data sharing, maybe a new governance. So many thanks for all this input. Fatima, you will stay with me on stage as you will be part of the second panel, and I will invite the other speaker to go back to their seat. Many thanks again.